Hi, I'm Cooper Hansen, and I'm here with Marcia Ann McLaren Miller. How are you doing this morning?
Hi, Cooper. Doing well, thank you.
All right, and you are a part of an organization called Regreen Greenfield. And how was this organization created? Because not a lot of small non-for-profit organizations are out here, but you seem to be a small one that is making a difference here. How was it created in the first place?
Well, Cooper, I'm glad you asked. In 1988, I was a teacher at Weston Elementary, and I had a group of 12 students who entered a community problem-solving contest at the state of Indiana, and they were chosen as the statewide leaders, and their idea was Regreening Greenfield. So from there, that year in 1988, we gave away 150 seedlings at the Courthouse Plaza, and the kids had sold donuts to make money and had enough money left over. We planted a tree in the park too. From there, Mayor Keith McLaren formed a task force the following year, and the year after that, we became our own 501c3, and ever since have consecutively been increasing the amount of trees that we're able to plant in Greenfield. That very first year, in 1988, it would have been 1990, we planted the whole corridor of crab trees on East Main Street that are still there in very beautiful canopy. So we're very happy and excited about the urban reforestation that we've been able to achieve over the years.
And why is this urban reforestation, why is that important, you think?
Well, it's very important for many reasons. Economic development, if somebody wants to decide to come to Greenfield to build a business or raise a family, if they see a nice town that looks like they care about planting trees, keeping everything looking beautiful, that's a big part of it. And also, trees provide a lot of oxygen for us to breathe, and as with all these cars behind us right now, there's a lot of pollution in the world that our efforts help to combat as well.
Yeah, and you actually are working on several areas. What are some of the places that you've mainly worked on? Like, what are some of the primary areas that you've planted trees and stuff like that?
We've planted trees in all four corridors, East Main, West Main, North State, South State. On Broadway, we had a large project. Up in Green Meadows, we're getting ready to plant some more trees up there now. Really all over the city of Greenfield. We have North Street. We've been active there. And we kind of just in time plant. We look to see where a tree is needed, and then we try to make it happen.
So, like, you mentioned some of the areas that you were working on, and what are all of the areas that you're currently trying to get working, I guess? But
well, again, the whole city of Greenfield, and my fellow board member, Sally Parsons, is going to be talking to you a little bit more about that. One of our great partners who we really appreciate is the city of Greenfield, their parks department, because they have been phenomenal in helping us. We're just a little not-for-profit. We don't pay anyone anything anytime except for when we buy a tree. So we have been extremely appreciative of the partnership that we have formed with the city of Greenfield and the Parks Department, because they have been amazing in being able to make some of our goals a reality.
And do you have any other sponsors? Because it's kind of hard, even with one sponsor, I think, to get so much done here, because you seem to have been doing a great job at doing this.
We're constantly on the lookout for grants. We are always appreciative of donations. We have a Facebook page I hope you'll check out, which is doing very well. As I said, we are completely volunteer. We have no paid employees.
All right, well, I think that's it, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with us about your organization.
Thanks, Cooper.
All right, here we are on Main Street here, and you mentioned that you've planted almost all the trees along the street here. What are some of the areas, like right here specifically, that you've worked on?
Well, we're coming up here along this right side of the street. You see this smallish elm tree. We planted that, I think, about 10 years ago. We had a project to do a Johnny Elm seed nursery. We had gotten a grant from the Department of Natural Resources, and we bought about 100 little tiny seedlings from an elm nursery that are Dutch elm disease resistant. This nursery in New Hampshire, and they sent them to us, and we grew them on till about a size of 8 or 10 feet, and then planted them. Along with those trees, if you go down North Street, West Street, South Street, American Legion Place, all of the new trees, you'll be able to tell by the size, have been planted by Regreeing. We're getting ready this year to do a big project of 118 trees, and we generally, like for example, we're going to plant a tree there, and we're going to plant a tree here, we're going to plant a tree across the street. As we go down these 2 or 3 blocks, any place you find a fairly large, suitable place for a tree, we have checked with the homeowners to get their permission to make sure that it's okay with them. Although it's not strictly the homeowner's property, this easement belongs to the city, but we don't want to put trees in tree lawns where people don't want them. Because if they don't want them, they won't take care of them, and then the tree will die, and that'll be a waste of our fundraising capability money and any donations we get.
Yeah, and you mentioned that almost all the trees like along these like Main Street and some on State Street, you mentioned that almost all of them are by Regreen Greenfield, and people may be surprised to find out that it's such a small organization like you guys have like done all this work for Greenfield. I mean, I didn't even know about all these trees being planted by you guys until like just a few minutes ago, so it's quite surprising to see such a small organization doing such good work for our community.
Well, thanks. It is a great organization, and the thing that's really extra value added is that because, as Mrs. Miller said, we don't pay anybody for anything except the trees. All of the labor we donate is free. So when the city gives us a small amount of money each year, just as a boost, and this last year they've given us a very nice contribution or support. So that's the reason we're going to be able to plant these 118 trees. But for example, the Parks Department does a great deal of the planting for us. Back in the early days, before I was involved with the group, when Mrs. McClarnon at that time and her students did this, the volunteer organization itself did the planting. They came out and actually dug the holes. But now we're all getting a bit too old for that. So the Parks Department has a crew. We planted this tree here. They bring out their auger and they plant the tree, and we come out and help too. Usually we're on site, at least 1 or 2 of us, to help because we do the planning of where the trees are to go. We drive around town and say, well, that looks like a good place, that place needs a tree, and our town needs so many trees because there have been 2 surveys done, or 3 surveys actually, since 2000, and I think the first one was done in '94, and then another one was done in 2004, and then another one, a mini survey a few years ago. And we found that in the last 10 years, Greenfield has lost 43% of its street trees, just by age, by disease, by people removing them. One of the former problems in town was that many trees were topped because they were planted improperly. They were planted in the wrong place. As you can see here, there's a nice wide tree lawn. There's no power lines above. We planted this elm in about 2004. And it's the right tree in the right place because it's a large tree and there's no interference from power lines. But in places you'll see driving around town where the trees have been topped off because there's a power line, those trees are then open to disease, insects, and it prematurely kills them. So those trees die. So that we have lots and lots of places where we're losing those trees quite rapidly. And the other big issue, of course, you've heard about the emerald ash borer. It's the insect that's killing all the ash trees, and it will kill almost every ash tree. And the ash trees in town, we have about 140 ash trees on the streets. If you drive down the median strip on Green Meadows, you know that median strip on Green Meadows?
Yes.
Every one of those trees is an ash tree.
Oh, wow.
Every one will have to be taken out. That will be one of our projects this coming spring when we get ready to plant our 118. I imagine that tree in pieces over there on the ground is an ash tree that's been taken down because of the emerald ash borer.
And you mentioned like what all kinds of trees do you have? Because you mentioned ash trees, you mentioned elm trees. Are those all the trees you have? Or?
Oh, we have lots and lots of different kinds of trees. We try to plant native trees because they're the best adapted. And even within the native tree category, you have to be careful to plant trees that, although they're native, they might not do so well in our soils. For example, a lot of the red maples don't do very well in our soils here because our soils are too alkaline. So we have to choose, for our criterion, we first of all have to look at the tree width on the ground, whether or not there are power lines, whether or not there are gas lines interfering. We also look at, are there other large trees nearby that are going to interfere with the growth of the tree we're planting? And then we look at just how it's going to contribute to the beauty of the area. Whether this particular tree, for example, there's a large tree across the street there. This would be a nice place for a tree, but it's between two sidewalks, and it might disturb the sidewalk. So we have to take that into account too. There are many factors that have to be taken into consideration when deciding which tree and which place. This next block that we're coming to is pretty bare. I guess it's the block after this one. It's quite bare, and we have planned for this spring to put in quite a few very large growing trees. They won't be large now, of course, but give them 20 or 30 years,
Yeah.
and they'll contribute to the environment. And along that line, as Mrs. Miller mentioned, we have so much pollution here because we have US 40, we have State Road 9, and we have 70. So for a small town, we have quite a bit of vehicular pollution. So one of the benefits of trees is, of course, they clean the air. The other thing that they do, which is becoming even more of a factor, is they take up storm water. A large ginkgo, like that, there was a large ginkgo back in the last block. That large ginkgo will take up about 8,000 gallons of storm water that would otherwise be in your basement.
Yeah.
So when you plant a tree, it's helping to control flooding, to keep water out of people's basements, and just, of course, it helps the tree survive.
Yeah, and this is just such a good program because, like I said, little people probably know that such a small organization did all this work for Greenfield. I personally think that it's just a great organization to...
It's a good group of people, and we so much appreciate the support we've gotten from the city, from the parks. We've gotten some excellent support from the nurseryman from whom we buy trees. He's going to help us with planting this year. Helps us. With the people on the board, we have some very knowledgeable people. We have several nurserymen, a landscape architect, all kinds of people with all kinds of talents, and we have people that just simply want to come out and help prune, and everybody has their niche. We're not a very formal organization. We don't even meet every month. We generally meet a couple of times a year. We do quite a bit of business, as it were, by email, just keeping in touch with each other, just knowing what's coming on and who needs to be what, to do what, where. In the past, we've done some pruning projects especially with the crabapple trees, which have, when they're young, they need quite a bit of formative pruning. And it's important to get that formative pruning done because you can't just plant a tree and leave it. It has to have some direction. For example, this tree's been pruned a couple of times to get the lower branches off so that it'll make a nice canopy over our heads. These are more of our trees here, these elms and the elms down on Broadway. We've had several projects. Last year we had a grant from the Department of Natural Resources. We planted 38 trees last year. The year before that, we planted about 25 trees from our budget. And this year, the City Council has supported us and we'll be doing 118 trees, which is quite a big planting for us.
Yes.
We don't have a more every year. It's just sort of what sort of budget do we have? And as Mrs. Miller said, we really appreciate any kind of donation. We're always on the lookout for grants that we can apply for. And a lot of times people will give us memorial contributions. We also would love to have young people who are interested in helping us on specific projects. Because we don't meet regularly, we don't do regular projects, we need to have a core of people that we can call on to come out and help us prune trees, mulch around trees, not the heavy work, but just some of the lighter maintenance. For example, these crabs here over the years have been pruned at the bottom. The suckers will tend to come up and those need a little bit of maintenance. We're always happy for homeowners to come out and take ownership and come out and do some of the work themselves, but I think they don't always realize that it's a good thing. They're not sure what they're doing. Here's an example of one of the top trees that'll have to be taken out, and this tree has been either pruned over the years improperly and there's lots of disease, so that'll be a tree that we'll lose. All of these trees along here you can see are not in very good condition, so we will be, as they get removed and the stumps get ground out, it'll leave us a new place for a tree. Across the street is a really good example too. It's very bare over there. There's no trees, and we will be planting over there this spring.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I was impressed with when setting up the interview for this was how dedicated your organization is. I mean, we almost got an email back instantly. Like, that's one thing, but it seems like you guys know exactly what you're doing because you've been around since what did Mrs. Miller say, 1988. That's quite a long time for a small non-for-profit organization to keep going. Like, you'd think by now you would almost give up, but this is clear dedication, and I thank you for your time, for coming out and interviewing. Thank you.